Hello. Come in from the noise and the hurry of the modern world. Find a place of quiet and settle your mind. Tonight, we're stepping through a door into a hidden past. A world lit not by electricity, but by the soft glow of embers and the cool light of the moon. A world that operated not on the clockwork of the factory, but on the patient, cyclical rhythms of the planets and the seasons. We are entering the world of the alchemist. Forget the caricatures of cackling old men obsessed with turning lead into gold. That is a shadow of the truth. We are here to explore the genuine heart of alchemy, a silent philosophical art, a sacred science. It was a spiritual discipline, a form of meditation where the laboratory bench was an altar, and the transformation of matter was a mirror for the transformation of the human soul. Join me now as we push open the heavy oak door and step into the alchemist's sanctuary. Just as the first light of dawn touches the sky, the alchemist's life was divided between two interconnected chambers, two halves of a single soul. The first where our journey begins is the oratorium, the place of prayer, study, and contemplation. Before a hand could touch a vessel, before a fire could be lit, the mind and spirit had to be prepared. The alchemists lived by a sacred rule, inherited from the Benedictine monks, ora et labora. Pray and work. The prayer always came first. Imagine this room in the pre-dawn quiet. The air is cool and smells of old paper, leather, and beeswax from a single candle that has just been extinguished. The only light is a pale gray wash coming through a high lidded glass window. This is a scholar's haven. On a heavy wooden lectern rests a great hand-bound book, its pages filled with cryptic diagrams and handwritten notes in Latin and Greek. The alchemist would have spent the first hour of their day here, not in frantic work, but in quiet reading. They were not just reading instructions. They were communing with the minds of the great masters who came before them, Zosimos of Panopolis, Mary the Jewess, Geber, Albertus Magnus. Reading their allegorical texts was an act of meditation, a process of slowly peeling back layers of metaphor to find a kernel of wisdom. On the desk, we see the tools of the mind, a brass astrolabe and a set of compasses, used not just for astronomy, but for contemplating the perfect, divine geometry of the cosmos. The alchemists believed that the patterns of the planets, the macrocosm, were reflected within the human body and the operations of the laboratory, the microcosm. As above, so below, the great axiom of the Emerald Tablet was the guiding principle. To study the stars was to study the soul. And here, too, a simple wooden prayer stool, a prie-dieu, worn smooth from years of use. Here, the alchemists would kneel, praying not for wealth or success, but for humility, for patience, and for divine guidance. They believed that the secrets of nature would not reveal themselves to an arrogant or impure mind. Only a heart cleansed by prayer and a spirit humbled before God could ever hope to successfully undertake the great work. The oratorium was the indispensable furnace of the mind, where intention was purified and focus was forged. When the mind was prepared, the alchemist would pass from the oratorium into the second chamber, the laboratorium, the place of work. The name itself tells us everything. It is the place of labor, slow, patient, meticulous physical effort. If the oratory was the soul of the practice, the laboratory was its body. The air here is different. It carries a new palette of scents, the sharp, mineral tongue of sublimated sulfur, the faint, metallic smell of lead, the earthy aroma of the charcoal used for the fire, and the pervasive, clean scent of distilled alcohol. The room is functional, a true workshop. The walls are bare stone, the floor is paved with flagstones, easy to clean in case of a spill. There's a large hearth with a bellows for metallurgical work, and workbenches are covered with an array of fascinating objects. Mortar and pestles of stone and brass for grinding minerals into fine powders. Filtration stands holding linen cloths for separating liquids. Small, carefully labeled wooden drawers containing mysterious substances, antimony, cinnabar, saltpeter, vitriol. Here is a crucible of fired clay designed to withstand immense heat. There is a pelican, a strange, cyclical distillation vessel that resembles the bird piercing its own breast to feed its young. Everything in this room is about process. It is about taking a raw, impure substance, a gift from the earth, and through a series of slow, gentle operations, helping it to achieve a more perfect state. The alchemists saw themselves not as a magician, conjuring something from nothing, but as a midwife to nature. They believed that all matter contained a divine spark, a potential for perfection, trapped within its coarse outer shell. Their work was to gently and patiently free that spark. The laboratorium was a place of immense silence, broken only by the hiss of distillation, the crackle of the furnace, or the gentle clink of glass on glass. The alchemists would often work for hours, even days, without speaking, their entire being focused on the subtle changes taking place within their vessels. The work demanded a monk's patience. Some operations had to be maintained at a gentle, constant heat for 40 days and 40 nights, the philosophical month. To fall asleep and let the fire go out was to ruin weeks of effort. This dual space, the quiet room for prayer and the silent room for work, was the complete world of the alchemist. One could not exist without the other. To work in the lab without the spiritual preparation of the oratory was seen as mere puffery, the work of a common charlatan. To pray and study without engaging in the physical labor was to be a philosopher with no connection to the real material world. It was in the sacred balance between these two rooms, between contemplation and action, between mind and matter, that the true great work could begin. To step into the alchemist's world is to learn a new language. It is a language not of spoken words, but of potent symbols, a sacred geometry that sought to describe the hidden forces of the cosmos. Alchemy was often called the secret art or the hermetic art, and its knowledge was intentionally veiled in allegory and to protect it from the profane and the unprepared. To read an alchemical manuscript is to solve a beautiful, intricate puzzle. Let us begin with the fundamental grammar of this language. At the very foundation of the physical world were the 4 classical elements, an idea inherited from ancient Greece. But for the alchemist, these were not just physical substances. They were qualities, principles. Fire, represented by an upward-pointing triangle, was the principle of heat, of energy, of expansion, of the sharp, active force that drives transformation. Water, its opposite, a downward-pointing triangle, was the principle of coolness, of moisture, of contraction, of dissolution and cleansing. Air, an upward triangle with a bar across it, was the mediator between fire and water. It was the principle of volatility, of gas, of the intangible spirit. And earth, a downward triangle with a bar, was its opposite. It was the principle of dryness, of coldness, of solidity, of the stable physical body in which the other principles were contained. Every object, every substance, was believed to be a unique combination of these 4 qualities. From the elements, we move to the 7 known metals of the ancient world. Each metal was profoundly linked to one of the 7 celestial bodies, a direct connection between the heavens and the earth, the macrocosm and the microcosm. First, there was gold, the most perfect of all metals. Its symbol was the circle of perfection with the dot in the center, the same symbol used for the sun. Gold was incorruptible, radiant, noble. It represented the perfected soul, the enlightened spirit, the goal of the great work. Then came silver, the second most noble metal. Its symbol was the crescent moon. Silver was pure, reflective, and cool. It represented the purified soul, the lesser work, the queen to gold's king. Mercury, or quicksilver, was the most mysterious of substances, a liquid metal that moved like a spirit. Its symbol, the familiar sign with a circle, a cross, and a crescent, was linked to the planet Mercury, the swift messenger of the gods. It represented the principle of volatility, the spirit itself. Copper, warm and beautiful, was linked to the planet Venus, its symbol. The familiar circle with a cross below represented beauty, love, and fertility. It was the creative, generative force in nature. Iron, strong and martial, was linked to the red planet Mars. Its symbol, the circle with an arrow, represented strength, vigor, power, and the aggressive forces that must be tamed. Tin, a soft and malleable metal, was associated with the great planet Jupiter. Its symbol, resembling a stylized number 4, represented expansion, generosity, and philosophical authority. And finally, there was lead, the heaviest, dullest, and most base of the metals. Its symbol, resembling a scythe, was linked to the slow, old planet Saturn. Lead represented prime matter, the starting point of the work. It was old age, decay, melancholy, and the dense, dark body that trapped the golden spirit within. The alchemist's great journey was to guide this lead of Saturn through the stages of the other planets, to finally arrive at the gold of the sun. Beyond the 4 elements and the 7 metals, the alchemists of the late Middle Ages conceived of a holy trinity of principles, the tria prima, which they believed constituted all things. These were not substances you could hold, but philosophical archetypes. Sulfur was the first. It was not the common yellow brimstone, but the principle of the soul. It was oily, fiery, active, and masculine. It was the combustible, energetic force within a substance, the part that gave it its unique character and identity. Mercury was the second. Again, not the common metal, but the principle of the spirit. It was fluid, volatile, ethereal, and feminine. It was the life force, the connecting link between the high and the low, the animating spirit that gave matter its vitality. And the third, salt, was a later addition. It was the principle of the body. It was solid, stable, and crystalline. It was the vessel, the matrix, the physical structure that contained the energies of sulfur and the spirit of Mercury, giving them form and stability. To the alchemist, a piece of wood was not just wood. When it burned, the flame that leaped forth was its sulfur being released. The smoke that billowed upwards was its mercury ascending. And the ash that remained behind was its salt, its purified, incorruptible body. To understand this language of symbols was to hold a key, a map to the hidden architecture of God's creation. The alchemist's mind was filled with the poetry of symbols, but their hands were occupied with the prose of their tools. The laboratory was a menagerie of strangely shaped glass and ceramic vessels, each one designed for a specific, gentle operation. This was the ars vitraria, the art of glass, and the alchemist was often a master glassblower, or worked closely with one to create the precise forms their work required. The vessels were not just tools. They were extensions of the alchemist's own body, fragile, transparent wombs in which matter could be transformed. Let us admire a few of these beautiful and purposeful objects. Perhaps the most iconic piece of glassware is the alembic. The alembic is the classic instrument of distillation. Its name comes to us from the Arabic alchemists, from alembic, meaning the cup or the still. It consists of 2 parts. The lower vessel, the cucurbit, shaped like a gourd, would hold the liquid, the wine, the fermented mash, the herbal infusion to be heated. As the liquid gently simmered, its spirit, its most volatile part, would rise as vapor. This vapor would collect in the upper part, the head, a domed cap with a cooled, downward-sloping tube. Here, the vapor would condense back into a liquid, the pure distilled essence, which would then slowly drip, 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 drip from the tube into a waiting receiving flask. This process of separating the subtle from the gross, the spirit from the body, was a central alchemical operation. To distill a substance was to purify it, to elevate it, to free its soul. The slow, rhythmic dripping of the alembic was the heartbeat of the laboratory. Next, we see the sturdy and versatile retort. The retort is a simpler vessel, but no less important. Its name comes from the Latin for twisted back. It is a single piece of glass, a flask with a long neck that is bent downwards. It was a workhorse of the lab, used for both simple distillation and for reactions where the resulting gases needed to be collected. The alchemist would place their substances in the belly of the retort and gently heat it, often in a sand bath to distribute the warmth evenly. The long bent neck acted as its own condenser, and the resulting liquid would collect at its end. The retort embodies a direct and simple process, a self-contained operation. Its elegant, swan-like form is a classic silhouette of the alchemical arc. Let us now consider the vessel of transformation, the philosopher's egg. This was the most sacred vessel of all. It was often called the hermetic vase, or simply the egg. It was a strong glass flask, a sphere or an ovoid with a long neck, in which the prima materia was placed. Once the material was inside, the flask was hermetically sealed, fused shut in the flame of a lamp to create a completely closed system. Nothing could get in or out. It was believed that the entire great work, the full cycle of creation, could take place within this single sealed microcosm. The alchemists would place the egg in their furnace and watch, for months, as the colors within slowly changed from black to white to red. The egg was a transparent womb, a tiny planet, within which a new, perfected reality was being gestated. And finally, we must pay our respects to the gentle, patient heart of the laboratory, the Athanor. The Athanor was the alchemist's secret weapon. Its name is also derived from the Arabic al-tanner, the oven. Unlike a normal furnace, it was not designed for high temperatures, but for extraordinary consistency. It was often a tall, insulated brick tower with a self-feeding mechanism, allowing charcoal to be added at the top and slowly feed the fire at the bottom. This design meant it could maintain a steady, gentle heat, often compared to the warmth of a sitting hen, for weeks or even months at a time, without the alchemist needing to constantly tend to it. It was the epitome of patience. The Athanor was the tireless, warm embrace in which the philosopher's egg was nurtured, a slow, gentle, artificial womb that allowed the great work to unfold according to its own natural, unhurried pace. The great work, the magnum opus, does not begin with a complex chemical formula or an exotic, rare ingredient. It begins with a search, a quiet, contemplative search for the most humble and yet most profound substance in the universe, the prima materia, or the first matter. What is this first matter? It is the great secret and the great paradox of alchemy. The ancient masters taught that it was not a specific substance you could simply find and purchase. It was a state of being. It was the original, unformed, chaotic potential from which God had shaped the world. It was the raw, primal essence that existed before the separation of the four elements. Imagine a block of flawless marble before the sculptor has touched it with a chisel, containing within it the potential for every beautiful form. Or imagine a single, silent seed that holds the blueprint for a great and ancient oak. This latent, undifferentiated potential is the prima materia. The alchemists believed this first matter was everywhere, in everything. It was ubiquitous, present in the rocks, the plants, the animals, and even within the alchemists themselves. And yet, it was universally despised, ignored, and thrown away by those who did not have the eyes to see it. Our gold is not the common gold, they would write in their cryptic text, and our matter is not the common matter. Their work began with finding this common, overlooked substance and recognizing its hidden, divine potential. So, where do they look? Not in the shops of apothecaries or the minds of kings, but in the quietest corners of nature. Many believe the purest form of the first matter could be found in the dew that collects on the fields in the early morning hours of May. They saw dew not as mere condensation, but as a celestial water, a heavenly balm that had condensed on the earth during the night, imbued with the nourishing light of the stars and the moon. The alchemist would rise before the sun and, with immense patience, would gather this dew drop by drop, believing it to be a chaotic heavenly water pregnant with the seeds of celestial fire. Others sought the first matter in rainwater, but not just any rain. They would consult their astrological charts and wait for a specific planetary conjunction, believing that the rain, which fell during a powerful spring storm, accompanied by thunder and lightning, was uniquely charged with the vital, generative spirit of the cosmos. They would place large glass vessels in the open to collect this living water, this divine fluid that nourished the earth. Still others looked to the mineral kingdom. They sought a specific, often metallic ore, which they called their Saturnine lit, their black dragon, or their secret fire. It was not a rare mineral, but a common one, often a sulfide like antimony or pyrite, which they believed contained a perfect balance of the hidden principles of sulfur and mercury. They would take this dark, heavy, seemingly dead stone and begin the slow process of breaking it down, of washing it, of awakening the sleeping spirit within it. The search for the prima materia was the alchemist's first test of humility and wisdom. It required them to look past the glittering and the obvious, and to find value in the humble, the simple, and the discarded. It was a spiritual exercise. In searching for the unformed potential in the outer world, the alchemist was simultaneously turning their gaze inward, searching for the spark of divine potential within their own soul, buried beneath the layers of ego, habit, and worldly distraction. The great work could only begin when the alchemists recognized that they, too, were a form of first matter, waiting to be purified, waiting to be transformed. Having found their humble starting point, the first matter, the alchemist's next task was to understand its inner architecture. The later masters, like the great Paracelsus, taught that all things in the universe, from a stone to a plant to a human being, were composed of three essential philosophical principles: the tria prima. These were not the common substances you could hold in your hand, but archetypal forces, the spiritual building blocks of reality. They were sulfur, mercury, and salt. The entire art of alchemy consisted of learning how to separate these three principles, purify each one on its own, and then recombine them into a more perfect, exalted, and harmonious union. This was the great secret of transformation. Let us first contemplate sulfur. When the alchemists spoke of sulfur, they did not mean the yellow rock we know today. Sulfur was the principle of the soul, the inner fire, the identity of a thing. It was the active, masculine, and energetic force. Think of the heat contained within a fever, the pungent aroma of a spice, the rich color of a flower. This was the work of sulfur. In a piece of wood, sulfur was its combustibility, its ability to produce flame. In a metal, sulfur was what gave it its unique character, its hardness, its color. In a human being, sulfur was the will, the passion, the ego, the individual consciousness. It was a powerful, essential force, but in its raw and pure state, it was volatile and coarse. The alchemist's work was to tame this fiery soul, to purify it of its dross, so that its true, steady, golden light could shine through. Next, we consider the elusive principle of mercury. Again, the alchemist's mercury was not simply the liquid metal. It was the principle of the spirit, the life force itself. Where sulfur was fixed and fiery, mercury was fluid, volatile, and ethereal. It was the feminine, receptive principle, the messenger that connects the realms of the high and the low, the soul and the body. Imagine the flowing of a river, the rising of the morning mist, the very breath that animates a living creature. This was mercury. It was the vital agent that allowed for change and transformation. Without it, matter would be dead and inert. In a human being, mercury was the imagination, the subconscious, the animating spirit that flows through the veins and carries the spark of life. The alchemist sought to capture and stabilize this fleeting spirit, to give it a pure vessel in which to dwell. Finally, we come to the foundation, salt. Salt was the third principle, the principle of the body, of form, and of stability. Where sulfur was the soul and mercury the spirit, salt was the physical vessel that contained them both. It was the principle of crystallization, of structure, of incorruptibility. When a piece of wood burns completely, the sulfur has fled as flame, and the mercury has fled as smoke. The white, pure ash that remains behind is its salt. This purified body, this crystalline matrix, was seen as impervious to decay. In a human being, salt was the physical body, the bones, the very tangible matter of our existence. The alchemist's goal was not to escape the body, but to purify it, to make it a perfect crystalline temple, worthy of housing a purified soul and a perfected spirit. The great alchemical motto, solvit coagula dissolve and coagulate, is a direct instruction for working with these three principles. The alchemist would first dissolve the raw substance, separating the fiery sulfur and the volatile mercury from the earthy salt. Then, after purifying each one individually through long and patient processes, they would coagulate them, bringing them back together in a new, sublime, and incorruptible form. This was the dance of creation, mirrored in the alchemist's flask. The preparations are complete. The oratory has stilled the mind. The laboratory has prepared the matter. The fire has been kindled with patience. The philosopher's egg, the hermetically sealed vessel containing the prima materia, now rests in the constant, gentle warmth of the Athenor. The alchemist's active work is over. Their work of watching, of waiting, of faith, now begins. They are about to enter the first great stage of the magnum opus, the great work. This stage is known as the nigredo, the blackening. It is the dark night of the soul, mirrored in glass. For weeks, perhaps for the entire 40 days and nights of the philosophical month, the alchemist watches as the matter within the flask begins to change. Under the influence of the gentle, digesting heat, the substance does not become brighter. It does not clarify. It does the opposite. It begins to break down, to corrupt, to putrefy. The contents of the vessel swell and darken, losing all their previous form and distinction. All the different colors of the raw matter bleed together, dissolving into a uniform, undifferentiated, black and chaotic mass. The alchemical texts describe this stage with grim, powerful imagery. It is the blacker than black, the raven's head, the flight of the crow. They saw in the flask the image of a dragon devouring its own tail, the Ouroboros, a symbol of a closed system turning in upon itself. They saw the death of the old king, whose body must now decompose to fertilize the soil for the new king to be born. This physical putrefaction was a necessary and essential first step. The alchemists believed that before any new, perfected form could be created, the old, imperfect form had to be utterly destroyed. The inner structure of the first matter had to be dissolved back into its original, chaotic, primal state. All of its hidden impurities, its coarseness, its corrupt nature, had to be brought to the surface and allowed to decay. This was not a failure of the work. It was the first sign of its success. To see the blackness spread through the flask was a cause for quiet, solemn relief. The process had begun. But the true meaning of the nigredo was not only in the flask. It was in the heart and mind of the alchemist. The outer process was a mirror for an inner one. As the matter in the vessel underwent its symbolic death, the alchemist underwent their own. The nigredo was the stage of confronting one's own inner darkness, a personal shadow. It was a time for the dissolution of the ego, the breakdown of old, rigid beliefs, the putrefaction of pride, of greed, of worldly attachments. Imagine the alchemist sitting in their quiet laboratory for weeks on end, watching this slow, dark decay. They would be forced to confront their own impatience, their own doubt, their own fear that the work has failed. They would have to sacrifice their desire for quick results and surrender to the slow, natural timing of the process. It was a profound spiritual trial. a descent into the underworld of the self. This was the dark night of the soul, where all seems lost, and the only thing that can carry one through is faith. Faith in the ancient texts, faith in the wisdom of the process, and faith that from this utter blackness, a new and brilliant light is destined to emerge. The Negredo is the necessary darkness before any true dawn. After the long, patient endurance of the Negredo, after the dark night has held its dominion for what seems like an eternity, the alchemist, ever watchful, perceives a change. A miracle in the flask. From the heart of the blackest putrefaction, a new color begins to emerge. It is the second great stage of the work, the albedo, the whitening. This stage is often described as the washing or the ablution of the blackened matter. The alchemists believed that as the gentle heat continued, a subtle vapor would rise from the dark mass, condense on the cool upper part of the sealed flask, and rain back down as a pure, clear dew. This inner dew would continuously wash the dead body of the matter below. Day by day, week by week, this gentle internal cleansing would rinse away the blackness. The process is one of exquisite slowness. At first, a shimmering film like oil on water might appear on the surface, displaying a rainbow of colors. Known as the peacock's tail, this was a joyful sign, indicating that the different elements within the matter were beginning to separate and organize themselves. But this colorful display was fleeting. As the washing continued, all the colors would resolve into one. Slowly, the black gives way to gray, the gray to a soft off-white, and then, finally, to a brilliant, shining, pure white. The texts call this the white dove, the white swan, the white rose. The matter, having died and decayed in the Negredo, is now reborn, baptized in its own purified spirit. It has become the white stone, or the white elixir. The transformation is profound. The once coarse, dark, and heavy substance is now light, pure, and luminous. Just as with the Negredo, the albedo was a mirror for the alchemist's own inner state. If the blackening was the dark night of the soul, the whitening was the dawn. It was the state of illumination that follows the successful confrontation with one's own shadow. The ego has been dissolved. The inner turmoil has ceased, and a new, pure consciousness has been born. It is a state of clarity, of innocence, of a mind washed clean of impurities. The alchemist, having passed through their trial of faith, now experiences a profound sense of peace and spiritual renewal. The completion of the albedo was a momentous occasion. It marked the end of the lesser work. The alchemist had achieved the first great goal, the creation of the white stone. This substance was believed to have the power to transmute lesser metals not into gold, but into pure silver, the metal of the moon. It was a powerful achievement in its own right. But the alchemist knew that this was not the final stage. The dawn was beautiful, but it was not the full light of day. The moon reflects the sun's light, but it is not the sun itself. The White Queen was now pure and ready, but she awaited the arrival of the Red King to complete the final glorious union. The lesser work is complete. The white stone, pure and luminous as the moon, rests in its glass womb. The soul of the matter and of the alchemist has been baptized and cleansed. But the journey is not over. The dawn is not the full sun. The White Queen, now perfected, awaits her union with the Red King. The alchemist, with renewed focus and reverence, now begins the final and most glorious stages of the magnum opus. To achieve this final perfection, a new quality of fire is needed. Not a harsher fire, but a more active, penetrating, philosophical fire. The alchemist might introduce a new substance to the flask, a ferment of purified philosophical gold, to awaken the solar principle within the lunar whiteness of the albedo. Slowly, under this new influence, another transformation begins. This is the citrinitas, the yellowing. Like the first light of dawn touching a pale sky, the white substance begins to take on a delicate citron yellow hue. This stage, often consolidated with the final stage in later texts, was considered vital by earlier alchemists. It represented the transition from the lunar feminine consciousness of the albedo to the solar masculine consciousness. It was the dawning of true wisdom, the first irradiation of the matter by the spirit of gold. The alchemist would watch with deep satisfaction as the color within the vessel deepened from pale yellow to a rich saffron or gold. The sun had risen. The matter was now ready for its final and most sacred glorification. With the yellowing complete, the alchemist applies the final regime of heat. This is the highest and most intense fire of the work, a fire that will bring about the royal wedding, the union of all opposites. And from this fire, the ultimate mystery emerges, the rubedo, the reddening. The golden yellow darkens, deepens, and blossoms into a color of profound and radiant life. It is the color of blood, of roses, of the setting sun, of the mythical phoenix rising from its own ashes. It is a deep, translucent, glowing ruby red. This is the final stage. The great work is accomplished. The Red King and the White Queen have been united in the alchemical wedding, and from their union, a new, perfected being is born. This red substance is the philosopher's stone. The texts describe it not as a dull rock, but as a heavy crystalline powder, or a glass-like translucent stone that glows with its own inner light. It was believed to be a projection of pure, divine, creative energy in physical form. Its powers were legendary. A tiny amount, it was said, could transmute a great quantity of a base metal, like lead, into pure, perfect gold, not by overpowering it, but by healing its imperfections and accelerating its natural evolution. But its greater power was the creation of the elixir of life. A small piece of the stone, dissolved in purified wine, was said to produce a potable gold, an elixir that could heal all diseases, restore youth, and grant a long and enlightened life. Yet for the true alchemist, these physical powers were merely allegories for a deeper spirit truth. The transmutation of lead into gold was a symbol for the transformation of the ignorant human soul into a vessel of divine wisdom. The elixir of life was not about physical immortality, but about the attainment of a timeless, enlightened consciousness. The rubedo in the flask was the outer sign of the rubedo that had occurred within the alchemist's own heart. Their spirit and body were now in perfect union, their soul perfected. They had not simply created a magical stone. They had become the stone. The fire in the Athenor may cool, but the work of the alchemist is never truly done. The perfection of matter was only one half of the art. The perfection of the mind required a different kind of labor, the slow, patient, and prayerful contemplation of the sacred texts that had been passed down through the ages. Of all these texts, none was more revered, more central, or more mysterious than the Tabula Smaragdina, the Emerald Tablet. This short, cryptic text of only 13 passages was attributed to the legendary figure of Hermes Trismegistus, thrice greatest Hermes, a mythical sage who was seen as a fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. The tablet was believed to be the foundational document of all Hermetic philosophy, a divine summary of the great work left behind by the Master of Masters. The alchemists would not just read its words. They would meditate upon each line for days, for months, seeking the layered meanings hidden within its poetic verses. Let us sit with the alchemist in their oratory and quietly contemplate a few of its passages. The tablet begins with a powerful declaration of truth. "'Tis true without lying, certain and most true." This is not a statement of scientific fact, but an affirmation of faith. It tells the reader that what follows is not mere speculation, but a fundamental law of the cosmos. It asks for a receptive and trusting mind. Visuals, a symbolic animation showing the cosmos above and the earth below. A faint, shimmering connection links the two realms. Then comes its most famous axiom: that which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to do the miracles of one only thing. This is the heart of alchemical thought, the macrocosm and the microcosm. The great universe of stars and planets, the above, operates on the same principles as the small universe of the earth, the human body, and the work in the laboratory, the below. The alchemist understood that by studying the patterns of nature and the heavens, they could understand the patterns within themselves. To perform the great work in a small glass flask was to replicate the very act of cosmic creation. The tablet then describes the genesis of its magical substance. Its father is the sun, its mother is the moon, the wind have carried it in its belly, the earth is its nurse. Here, the alchemist saw a clear, though allegorical, recipe. The one only thing, the philosopher's stone, is conceived from the union of the solar, masculine principle, sulfur, and the lunar, feminine principle, Mercury. It is carried and spiritualized by the principle of air, and it is finely nurtured, grounded, and given form by the principle of earth. It is a child of all four elements, a perfect balance of all cosmic forces. It offers a direct instruction for the laboratory work. Separate thou the earth from the fire, the subtle from the gross, sweetly with great industry. This is a beautiful, poetic description of distillation and purification. The alchemist must, with great skill and patience, great industry, and with gentle heat, sweetly separate the pure, ethereal, spiritual essence, the subtle from the impure, solid, physical body, the gross. This is the essence of solve et coagula. It is the separation that must precede any true and perfected recombination. To read the emerald tablet was to hold a map of the universe. Its dense, symbolic language was a form of protection, ensuring its wisdom could only be unlocked by a mind that was patient, humble, and attuned to the poetry of the cosmos. For the alchemist, these were not just words on a page. They were the living voice of Hermes, echoing through the quiet chambers of their soul. While the great and secret work with minerals and metals was the highest pursuit, the alchemist's art was not confined to the dark laboratory. Many were also master herbalists and physicians, applying the same universal principles of alchemy to the vibrant, living world of plants. This practice, often called spagyrics, was a way to create powerful, holistic medicines by separating, purifying, and recombining the three essential principles of a plant. The alchemist's garden was another kind of laboratory, a place to learn the secret virtues hidden within the leaves, roots, and flowers. At the heart of this practice was a beautiful and gentle philosophy known as the doctrine of signatures. This was the belief that a benevolent creator had placed a sign, or a signature, on every plant, revealing its hidden purpose and its connection to the human body. The alchemist, as a quiet observer of nature, learned to read this visual language. A plant with heart-shaped leaves, like the wood sorrel, was believed to be a remedy for the heart. The mottled leaves of the lungwort, which resemble the tissues of a lung, were used for respiratory ailments. The delicate eyebright flower, with its small, eye-like markings, was used to treat afflictions of the eye. The rugged, jointed stems of horsetail were seen as a signature for healing the joints and bones of the body. This was not seen as mere coincidence, but as a map, a divine act of compassion, allowing humanity to discover the healing powers of nature simply by looking with an open and attentive heart. With this knowledge, the alchemists would gather their chosen plant, often at a specific astrological time, and begin the spagyric process. A microcosm of the great work, the goal was to separate the plant into its own salt, sulfur, and mercury. First, they would seek the plant's mercury, its spirit. This was done by fermenting the plant matter into a simple mash, and then gently distilling it in alembic. The pure alcohol that dripped from the spout was considered the plant's spirit, its life force, captured in liquid form. Next, they would seek its sulfur, its soul. This was the principle that gave the plant its unique character its specific aroma and color. The alchemist would take the remaining plant matter from the first distillation and, through steam distillation or other methods, extract the plant's essential oils. This fragrant, colorful oil was the soul of the plant, its unique personality. Finally, they sought the salt, the purified body, the tough, fibrous plant matter that remained after the first two processes was taken and burned in a hot fire until nothing was left but a pile of gray ash. This ash was then washed with distilled water, filtered, and evaporated, leaving behind a fine, pure, white crystalline powder of the plant's essential mineral salts. This was its incorruptible body. The final magical step was the recombination. The alchemist would take the purified spirit, the purified soul, and the purified body, and dissolve them back together again. The result was a spagyric tincture, a medicine believed to be far more potent, balanced, and harmonious than a simple herbal infusion. It was the entire being of the plant, exalted to its highest potential. This secret garden and the art of spagyrics was a reminder to the alchemist that the great work was not just an abstract, philosophical quest, but a practical art that could be used to bring healing, balance, and harmony to the human body, directly mirroring the healing and balancing of the soul. The fire in the Athenor has been extinguished. The last drop has been distilled. The philosopher's stone, the radiant rubedo, rests in its leaden casket, its light contained. The great work is accomplished. Our long, quiet journey through the alchemist's world is drawing to its close. What then remains? What is the lingering essence, the true legacy of this secret and often misunderstood art? On the most practical level, the legacy of alchemy is the foundation of modern science. In their tireless, patient, and meticulous quest, the alchemists became the world's first true experimentalists. Though their goals were spiritual, their methods were empirical. They developed and perfected the techniques that are still the bedrock of the laboratory today: distillation, sublimation, crystallization, filtration. In their search for the first matter, they discovered and classified a host of new elements and compounds: antimony, arsenic, bismuth, phosphorus. The strange and beautiful glassware they designed, the alembic, the retort, the beaker, can still be seen in modified form in any chemistry lab. The alchemists, in their search for the soul of matter, inadvertently mapped its body. They were the chrysalis from which the butterfly of modern chemistry would eventually emerge. But the physical legacy is only a shadow of the true meaning. The real secret of alchemy was never about turning lead into gold. It was a grand, elaborate allegory for the human journey of transformation. The 20th century psychologist Carl Jung recognized the alchemical process as a profound map of what he called individuation, the journey to becoming a whole, integrated self. The nigredo was the necessary confrontation with one's own darkness, the shadow self. The albedo was the purification and integration of that shadow, the illumination of the conscious mind. And the rubedo was the final union of all opposites, conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, spirit and body, to create a complete, balanced, and enlightened individual. The philosopher's stone was not an outer object, but an inner state of being. The true gold was a perfected soul. And it is this inner legacy, this quiet wisdom, that still speaks to us today, across the centuries. In our world of instant results and constant distraction, the alchemist's art teaches us the profound value of patience. It reminds us that true transformation is always a slow, gentle, and organic process. It cannot be forced. In a world that urges us to specialize, it teaches us the importance of uniting our inner, contemplative life with our outer, practical work, the union of the oratorium and the laboratorium. It teaches us that our daily work, no matter how humble, can become a sacred act if it is performed with mindfulness and intention. And most of all, it teaches us to look for potential in the humble, the simple, and the discarded. To believe that within every lump of lead there is a sleeping sun, and within every human soul there is a divine golden spark, waiting patiently for the gentle fire of our attention to awaken it, purify it, and allow it to shine. The quiet work of the alchemist is, in the end, the quiet work of becoming fully human. Sleep well,